Darlene and Sharonne. Couple 373, Professional Classic Bachata Showcase, Darlene and Sharonne. Y estamos en competencia. That was couple number 373, Darlene and Sharonne, Professional Classic Bachata Showcase. Couple number 373, Darlene and Sharonne.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Rivera, and this is the Live Discussions with Diamond podcast, episode 160, and also the conclusion of our All Women's Month this September. And what you saw was an amazing performance from a past World Salsa Summit in 2015 Bachata Showcase. And today we have a very special guest. We're taking it all the way back to Philly. Philly representing hard right now. And we have the one and only Sharonne Vinokurov.
Hello.
Hello, Sharonne. First of all, when I seen that video, it brought back so many memories. Of course, competitions, but just seeing energy, just seeing presence, stage presence, and just for me, seeing an artist like you, especially for many years as we talked, it's an honor to have you on the platform today.
I can feel myself blushing right now. Thank you so much. That's really very kind.
Absolutely. For me as well, as we talked as well, my many years in the scene and yours as well, having the opportunity, both of us being on stages, performing, the endless rehearsals, the costumes, everything in between, but having a moment to really just have a conversation, I think that's so important. As we've talked as well, privately realizing that a lot of us performers don't really have those moments to just have those genuine conversations. Usually we have them in our hotel rooms with our friends, but having people online as well, the people that love us on stage actually get to know a little bit more about us, I think is amazing. So, for me, having you on the platform is great because, of course, we're here to celebrate your success. But I think most of all, it's celebrating you as a human being, celebrating you as a person, because I think, and as we've talked, being artists, sometimes our stories get lost.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
having the chance to just have this one-on-one is amazing and special, but also to celebrating besides your dancing, celebrating your platform called Women of Dance, which we'll get into. But as I always start the podcast, I love kind of taking it way back and helping people understand you. So, Sharonne, kind of give us an understanding of who Sharonne is before dance, and then we'll go dive right into your dance career.
Well, that's kind of hard to say because Sharon started dancing at 2.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
okay.
don't really remember a life before dance, to be honest
Mhm,
with you. I'm very fortunate. My parents were really like it was a priority for them to instill a culture in my brothers and my life. So,
mhm,
you know, the arts were super important, ballet, artwork, reading, music, every we were just instilled all of that in a very young age.
mhm,
So the joke is that I was singing and dancing before I could walk and talk. So as soon as they could, they put me into dance class and I never looked back. It was everything. I remember they took me to the Nutcracker when I was like
mm.
5 or 6. And I remember sitting in the audience and looking at my mom and pointing to the stage and saying, "That's what I want to be. Like, I see myself on the stage. Like, I want to dance." And they were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure you will. Absolutely. Go to school." Um, but yeah, so I did ballet. I actually did tap for a little bit in the very
Mhm,
beginning. And I kick myself every day that I didn't continue with tap because it's such a lost and underappreciated art form.
mhm.
But ballet for me was my heart. So I just immersed myself in it and I did it until I physically couldn't anymore. Um, and I had to retire because I couldn't dance on point anymore. I got hurt.
Mhm.
So I had at one point in my life dabbled with ballroom when I was
Yeah,
young. But like I said, ballet was my
yeah.
focus, my heart and soul. So I had pushed it aside. So when I couldn't do ballet anymore, I needed to find another way to let my creative juices flow, if you will.
Mhm.
And I had a little stint as a DJ.
Oh, really?
Just yeah, a couple of years. I worked as a house music DJ in
Oh,
Philly.
oh, house music. Okay, we're taking it there then. I completely get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a little bit of a house music phase. I was DJing. I had some really great friends that taught me how to do it. They were in it and they were like, there really aren't women doing this.
Mhm.
So we'll teach you everything. Music, get in there. And I was enjoying it. But then I really missed dancing and not just
Yes.
bouncing around in a booth. So I started taking ballroom again. And then Joe Figueroa actually had started teaching salsa classes at the ballroom studio that I was taking. I started at Top Hat and I
Okay.
was taking ballroom classes there and training with Joseph Kerner for
Mhm.
competition. And then Joe had started salsa classes, and I took one of his classes, and I was like, "Well, this is fun." And then he said, "Come to the Reef. I have a bachata lesson that I do." And I said, "Well, what the hell is bachata?" Because as a ballerina, I had no
Oh,
freaking
absolutely.
clue. Like, what is this? And I took my first bachata class, and I remember walking outside afterwards, calling my mother and going, "I think I found the dance I love as much as ballet."
Mm. And that's interesting too because talking to many guests that I have in the past, many of them either kind of stumbled upon a class. We have the story of dance has always been in my life. But one thing I've noticed with many dancers that I can tell a difference, and this is my humble opinion, I can tell a difference between a dancer that has studied or been well versed and well rounded in other styles,
Mhm.
including ballet, compared to someone who just stumbled upon a salsa class or a bachata class. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking anyone, but there is a difference. There
Mhm.
is a way of you approaching the dance, in my opinion. And like you said with ballet, if people don't understand, many people that I've known have done ballet, that career is very demanding. That
Oh,
dance, especially on the feet, and
mhm.
realizing too is that one wrong move, one injury can really alter your career indefinitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you don't you don't want it to happen that way. You pray that you do everything right and you take good care of yourself, but your feet are everything. So
Yes.
when you're told you can't dance on point anymore, and you've spent 20 years of your life working towards a goal, it's hard. It's a
Mhm.
hard adjustment to make. And I knew when I got hurt that that was my last perform. It happened during like a show.
Ooh.
And I knew, like, I finished the show, but I had to be carried out to my car because I couldn't walk. I was in so much pain. And I knew that I would never dance ballet again.
Wow. I mean, but then, as you said, you kind of stumbled, or Joe Figueroa, kind of introduced you into kind of the Latin side, but also, like you said, you've had experience with ballroom. People also have to understand ballroom is totally different.
Yes, it
And
is.
it can have, the posture is different. Everything in between the lines can be different. And don't get me wrong, I see people in salsa
Mhm.
take some of the measures and the nuances and try to implement them.
Of
But
course.
absolutely, I've always seen ballroom as a total different beast than salsa, bachata. But a question I have for you then is, what was it like kind of taking your first Latin classes? Was it kind of a smooth transition, or were there some bumps along the way?
I mean, in, it's funny. It's like yes and no. It definitely felt like a smooth transition in the sense that I was always good at picking up choreography and whatnot. So learning the moves
Hmm.
and remembering moves was never an issue for me. It was more about retraining my body to carry itself differently, right?
Hmm.
To become more grounded. For years, all I heard was bend your knees, ballerina, right? Because I was so used to pulling up and lowering my arms. So there were things that I wasn't aware of when I first started taking classes
Hmm.
that I think ignorance is bliss, maybe. Like it gave me the confidence to be like, oh, I can just make my way into this and make that transition a little bit easier, I think. But then once I started looking at it like, oh, this could be more than a hobby, right? This could be more than just going out social dancing.
Yeah.
Then I started approaching it from a different perspective.
And that's something you said that's very key, because there's a difference between the dancers in our community. There's ones that, you go to your class, you go to the socials, and you're more of a socializing dancer.
Mhm.
But then there are those that say, I want to learn a little bit more. And then you might see a performance. And that right there gives you that trigger of, I want to do this. I want to get into it. But you having your previous experience in ballet and ballroom, I think it was kind of meant to be, in a sense. So what year would you say that time period came about?
Let's see. I want to say I got into the scene around 2006,
Mm,
2007,
yeah.
maybe. I started dabbling with the classes. And then, I mean, well, I was with AIM for almost 12 years. And before that, I was in the scene for like another three. I've been in the scene for like 14, 15 years at this point.
That's and mind you, when you say that, think of how many people can't even fathom what dance class they even took in 2007 or 8, let alone most people have probably just taken their first classes in the last 5 years. And many people don't even understand, if you have those stories about what it was like back then, because everybody says, "Oh, what was it like?" There's certain people like me and you that know what it was like. I mean,
Yep.
even as you talked about AIM, Art in Motion, me meeting the owner, Darlin Garcia, those many years ago, around 2005, and but also realizing, coming from New York, I was a young teenager realizing, oh, there's salsa in Philly. I just thought it was in New York. So those are my first introductions, especially places like New York and LA were always the two hot spots. But
Hmm.
also doing this podcast, talking to artists from Ohio, Florida, Texas, and Philly and Jersey, realizing like how big salsa was, especially Philly and New Jersey for me as a young teenager was my really big introductions besides LA. I mean, Philly, but the tri-state area alone is
Hmm.
really big and has many amazing dancers. So, you know, for
Absolutely.
for you kind of starting out around the mid 2000s, what was that time period like for you? Was it kind of like a nerve-wracking experience, or you were kind of just comfortable in your own skin and just going with the flow of things?
I definitely think I was just going with the flow of things.
Hmm.
I was just really excited. Like I said, I there was something that happened when I heard bachata music that kind of gave me like this new spark.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to immerse myself in like as much of it as possible. So I was listening to bachata music all the time,
Mm.
and my friends would make fun of me. They're like, "I don't want to be in your car anymore. You went from listening to blasting house music to
Yeah.
blasting songs that we don't even know." And I'm like, "But it's so good, and the guitar." And they would just be really annoyed. But for me, it was just so fun, and I just wanted to go out all the time and
Hmm.
social dance and meet people and just kind of like be a sponge and absorb it all. And then when I went to my first congress, it was like, oh my God, it was like, this is a whole world. This is a
Yeah.
whole life. Like there are events and people travel and you can have a career doing this. And growing up, I didn't know that was an option. Growing up, I thought if you wanted to be a dancer, you were either a ballerina,
Hmm.
you danced on Broadway, or you did like music videos and tours.
Yeah.
That was it.
And when even you say that, it's that was really the notion back in those days,
Yeah.
because really the entertainment world, don't get me wrong, we've had like movies like Dance with Me and other films throughout the years back in those days that had some representation, but I would say in the last 10 to 15 years, you've seen the representation of our culture just explode.
Oh,
Even for people that we've met at congresses and now seeing them on a main screen
mhm,
TV and movies, that right there is representation at its finest. But it was something you said earlier that was really intriguing, was taking bachata classes since the early 2000s, and realizing too, I think many people don't know, bachata has been around for many years, but the
oh,
exposure into our dancing
mhm.
has only been since probably 2008 or 9. And
Yep.
we're talking about, with Bataca Alemana, but also there's many other people within the dance scene, bachata dancers. Bachata's always been around, but the recent exposure is not on the same as it was with salsa. But I can definitely say with bachata, it has taken over globally
Oh,
in the past 10, 15 years, without a shadow of a doubt.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love it, and my love for it has grown.
Mhm.
I've appreciated more of the traditional aspects of it.
And see, when you say traditional, I know exactly what you mean, because
Mhm,
many people who now, and the conversations I have with artists or even just friends of mine who like bachata music, who really just kind of hear it on TV or hear it on YouTube or on a radio station, you kind of hear the main artist. But for many people who don't know about bachata, the traditional aspect of it and then the sensual aspect of it it's similar but much different, because I would say as traditional has been really the forefront for
mhm,
so many years, because it really derives from the Dominican Republic. But we've seen also with different things that have come from different parts of the world, it
mhm.
evolves. And
Every
then we,
Yeah.
yeah. So when I started seeing sensual, I knew there was going to be a change, because the attention that it was getting of people, captivating people's eyes of,
Mhm.
oh wow, there's this style that is more connective and flowy. But I think also the lack of education of understanding where it derived from was an issue,
Yes, absolutely,
because
absolutely.
also too, seeing the video of you at the World Salsa Summit in 2015, realizing that I loved it because it was traditional. It was, it was your own creativity, but it gave ode to traditional, because for so long now, many people that I talk to when I talk about bachata, they're saying bachata sensual. And I'm like, no, the traditional for me, I love and adore. Even as a videographer, I love filming all styles, but nothing just gets me going, gets my juices flowing, my blood rushing, than an awesome traditional dance with someone who I connect with.
Yes.
So, a question I have for you then is, going from being your novice learner to taking your classes to social dancing, going into congresses, and then performing. What was that feeling like of actually being on a stage that's not a ballet setting, being
Hmm.
on a more of a Latin side? What was the feeling or the atmosphere like for you?
Um, well, I could tell you, in terms of my first Congress, it was just really exciting. I mean, I
Mhm,
always, anytime I debut, even to this day, whenever I debut something, I always get those nervous butterflies.
mhm,
Depending on how prepared I am, they'll either be like a little bit or they'll be like massive and I'm having anxiety. But I've always felt very comfortable on stage since
mhm.
I was a child. It's really funny. Like my parents, I'm doing this interview at their house right now, and it's ironic because I'm in their library. They have all these photo albums, and there's like
Yeah.
pictures of me, in my first routine at 3 years old, and you see me on stage with a bunch of little kids, and they're all sobbing, and I'm like living my best life out there. So I never had a fear of being on stage. I
Mhm,
feel very much at home on stage. It's the moments right before I go out
mm,
on the stage that I feel my nerves. Once I'm out there, I'm ready to go. Like, let's do this, party time. But it's before I go out on stage where I get that. So my first time,
mhm.
and I definitely had those nerves. I actually was more nervous performing at a local club for the first time
Yeah.
than I was on a Congress stage. Because I'll tell you right now, my first performance in a nightclub, I was dancing with Vicky Woods for her girl group Ainama.
Mhm,
And it was the very first routine that we did. And we did it at this club called Lyrics,
mhm.
which a lot of people in Philly, if you're watching, you know about Lyrics. Um, it's a fun place. Unfortunately, they just closed
Okay.
their farewell party. But I remember before we went there, I don't know if the girls were messing with me or what, but they said, "Listen, you better go out there and crush it because they don't like white girls in there."
Mm.
And I was just like, "Oh my god, they're gonna kill me!" But it was, I don't know. They might have been messing with me just to mess with me. I have no idea. But that was probably the most nervous I had been about doing anything in the scene. But
Man.
it was
And
very.
it's interesting what you just said because, especially growing up in New York, when it comes to anything with Latin dancing,
Mhm,
many years back, it was a rarity at times to see a person who wasn't Latino or anyone who was Latino or
mhm,
Black, n not I mean, yeah, anyone who wasn't that dancing. I mean, had social dancing, but seeing it in performance. But for me, also doing my research, realizing people like Oliver Pineda, who came from Australia, and
mhm.
people from like Tropical Gem from many years back. There's so many dancers that for me, I never, as they say, don't see color. For me, I just love seeing diversity
Yeah.
because the more diverse my community was, the better because you got more influence. And for me, I would say is that unfortunately that notion was true at one point, but it was always ignorant
Mhm.
because for me, my big thing was I was a biracial kid growing up in New York who didn't know Spanish, but danced stronger and harder than my Hispanic counterparts because that was my chip on my shoulder. It was
Yeah.
you were the big kid who couldn't understand the words to the song. So I said, great. I could care less if I didn't know the words. Let me perform, and I'm gonna make sure I look better than you. Because for
Okay.
many years is the ridicule or the comments, the criticism from many others. But if you really understand, a lot of the criticism comes from people who are watching you rather than be on the stage with you. And and the lovely thing of having you say that since you were young, you love this stage because I've also talked to many artists and their big thing is sometimes they don't like the stage, they don't like the bright lights, but it's also the facade that they have to provide in
Mhm.
order to show the image that people love. And realizing you've been always genuine from beginning until present, that's an amazing thing because genuineness almost sometimes lacks in our community.
Okay.
And an interesting story was meeting Darlin in Philly. My first show in Philly was bad. My first show, I fell and I popped right back up. And immediately, Darlin came to me and he said, I saw that. He said, the good thing you came up because if you didn't, we were going to have a talk.
Oh my,
And from that, from that moment, I realized I'm going to give all my energy, but I need
mhm,
to make sure everything is in unison because you understand too, working as a team is
mhm.
different than working solo.
Oh, absolutely.
You can give it your all in the performance, but it looks a lot better when everyone's on point. Everyone's
Mhm.
in the same energy, everyone's doing the same thing at the same time. And for me, seeing you many years back and just performing, I just loved your energy. I loved how you own the stage because, in my humble opinion, we have so many dancers all over the world, so many performers, but there's very few that really you can see the confidence in them through their dancing because many people I know this, and it may be a secret that I'm about to expose, but many dancers look straight towards the light because they don't want to look at other people.
Oh, no,
And
forget that. I wanna look at people.
thank you. And
I
but
wanna
like
look at people. I wanna connect with my audience when I'm performing with them. Like, come
but
on.
then you even said too, and I definitely believe that it's a total difference than performing at a congress than
Oh,
performing at your local lounge or club.
oh,
I
absolutely.
love that because you feel the body heat, the energy, you feel the eyeballs, you see everyone and they see you. They see when a sequin pops off your costume quick.
Yep.
They notice
That
it.
rhinestone go flying off your
Oh
costume.
yeah, I'm gonna get that rhinestone. It costs money and make sure I get it back. But realizing too, I think again the socialization aspect, having people literally right when you get off stage are right there in front of your face.
Mhm.
And that right there is something you can't take for granted. So, a question now that I have for you is, of course, through your dancing and through your career, then you've also, like we've seen in the beginning video, entering into competitions. And having you here is so important for me because I've always been more of a performer on the stages at congresses, festivals, socials, never have done a competition. So, a question I have for you is throughout your years of competing, what
Mhm.
have some have been the most important lessons that you've learned over the years?
Ooh, there's a lot. Well, first of all, competition is not for everyone,
Mhm,
right? There are people like we always want to compete because it's great because you get to challenge yourself. You have deadlines,
mhm,
you have, goals that you have to attain on a certain amount of time. So it's constantly pushing you to be better. But it's an animal in and of itself. So it's not for everybody. So the first thing is if it's not for you, it's okay. Right? You don't have to compete to be good. You don't have to compete to have a career. I know plenty of people that don't and are fine with it.
mhm,
If you're going to compete, you need to be prepared to put the work in, right? A lot of rehearsals, be prepared for failure. It's not going to be success your first time out. Um, if it is, mazel, congratulations, that's awesome. But it takes a lot of work and it makes you appreciate the process more,
mhm,
right? Like I remember my very first like the first time I went to the World Latin Dance Cup, they have like a qualifier round and then a semifinal and you
yeah,
have to go through the whole process. And it was my first time doing a salsa solo and I didn't make it past qualifiers and I was devastated. I was like,
mhm,
what am I doing in this scene? My mother was right. I'm too much of a ballerina for this, blah, 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 blah. Like, I should just go back to ballroom or whatever. But instead of that, I let it fuel me, right? So the next year I worked with like I worked with a coach. I didn't do my own solo. I
mhm,
contacted Anya. I brought somebody in to help push me to the next level, right? I came back and the next year I made it to the live semifinals. Like so you need to if you want to compete, you need to know that this is going to be a journey, right?
mm,
It's going to be a journey, it's going to be a struggle. There are going to be times where everything just clicks and it feels like magic and there's going to be times where you feel like no matter what you're trying to do it's just not working. The best thing you can do is if you want to keep doing this you have to keep going, right?
mm.
Failure isn't when you don't win. Failure is when you win and you don't try again,
That
right?
right there is
If
special.
I had quit I could have not come back, right?
Yeah,
I could have been like, this competition thing isn't for me. But instead I kept going, I kept pushing and look what I've done over the years since, you know? So like, that's what, if you want to compete, like just be prepared for that journey, right? It's not going to be overnight, but it will be a journey, and it'll be one that you're really grateful that you went to. You'll come out a changed person for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, speaking to many artists that I know who have done competitions, like they said, the one thing resounding is they've gotten better over time,
Yep.
because you don't put the cliche of the 10,000 hours in and you don't get better, because
Yep.
ultimately it's up to you. And realizing with competitions, it can be very fun, but it can be also very draining and very
Oh,
intense.
so
And
draining.
it's like you said, those lack of hours of sleep.
Mhm.
But I tell you this is that, from what many people have told me too, something that I feel should change is the respect factor in terms of just people. Just understanding we want the trophy, but I think with more appreciation for the people that are attending and competing, and just the
Mhm.
camaraderie. And if I may use a term, I think everyone should be a mensch. I think
Oh,
everyone should have that. Of course, of course. I think everyone should have that integrity and honor, because evidently it's those few competitors that the whole world sees.
yes.
So having that representation of people just helping one another. We get it. There's the ultimate goal, but realizing that everyone was able to get there and progress, whether it's a semifinal, whether it's a quarterfinal or final, you're there and
Mhm.
you're taking that time, and that's something I think no one should definitely take for granted. So now, understanding too, we're gonna get into. Before we get into this video, kind of understanding, as you talked as well throughout our talk, about Joe Figueroa, a person that was the first person to kind of introduce you into this scene in a sense, and kind of tell us a little bit about this video that we're about to see that
Oh,
I'm really excited to show.
so, as I said, Joe was my first salsa instructor. I had actually met him a couple years before. I was in college in New York,
Hmm.
and I was coming home on every other weekend. And I had taken a friend of mine, and we'd gone out to Cuba Libre one night, and he was performing with his sister. Well,
Mm,
I had social danced with him, and I got his card, but I put it in a drawer. I went back to college and never thought about it. And then when he started teaching at Top Hat, when my mother was actually the one who told me, because she remembered the card, it was like still in the drawer. And she was like, I think you know the instructor for salsa, like go say hi.
yeah.
And that's how I ended up taking his classes. Um, so I danced, I was his student for a while, and I did his semi-pro team,
Hmm.
for bachata and for salsa. And we just stayed friends over the years. I actually auditioned for Art in Motion while I was still dancing on Joe's team.
Yeah.
And so there was an overlap. Like I was involved on 3 teams at one point
Oh my
at the same time. So I like to do a lot. So
Yeah.
after I had been with Aina Ma, I had joined up with Christy Cam and another girl, and we kind of
Hmm.
started the thing, and we did Music Caliente, which was a ladies group. And then I was dancing on Joe's salsa and bachata teams. And then a friend of mine had told me Darlin was holding auditions, so I went to audition for Art in Motion.
Hmm.
And when I was on the semi-pro team at the time, I was dancing on all 3 teams.
Hmm.
When Darlin moved me to the pro team, I stepped back and I told, Christy, and I called Joe and I said, guys, I'm going to focus my time on AIM.
Hmm.
And they both said, best, like, we love you, best of luck, go do your thing. And then after I had been dancing with AIM for a while, Joe and I had reconnected and started dancing together professionally.
Yes.
So instead of it being teacher student, it was partners. And it's always been fun working with him. We work very easily together. The first routine that we choreographed together from scratch was a bacha tango routine,
Mm,
also to the same artist that we used for the Casablanca video. Um, and it was the song Lodice. And that was one of my favorite routines that I ever choreographed. It came together very quickly, very easily. Sometimes you find the right song And it just, you know, magic happens in the studio,
Yeah.
if you will. I mean, we choreographed the whole routine in maybe an hour and a half. Like it flowed. And we never did another Bacha Tango again because we couldn't find anything that would follow up to it, like that was good enough.
Mhm.
So I said, you know, unless we find something good, we're not going to do that. And then, you know, here comes COVID and everybody's sitting at home, bored out of their minds. And I was watching lots of movies.
I'm assuming black and white movies. I'm assuming.
I took it back. I mean, I went on a whole kick. I went on a history documentary kick, the whole 9 yards. But I always loved film. I took film studies classes when I was younger. I minored in drama in college. I took like play directing classes, all of that stuff. I was always very fascinated with it. And I had remembered I'd watched Casablanca when I was like in high school, but I didn't remember the whole movie. I think I might have like fallen asleep. It was in school. So, you know, very common. You just fall asleep at your desk. So I rewatched the film, and literally by the time the credits were rolling, I saw the whole thing in my mind. I could picture all of it, the scene, where we were going to shoot. I knew I wanted to call him to have him do it with me. I knew what I wanted to wear. Like it was just, the vision came to me. And I messaged him and I was like, I have an idea. And I told him what the idea was and how I wanted. And he was like, I don't really get it, but I'm in. Whatever you want. And it was nice because he really took a step back and just kind of said, this is your vision. Just use me where you see it and let me just go, you know? And it was really great. He had the song already pre-cut. He had cut it at some point before. I knew I wanted that song. I didn't know he already had an edit of it ready to go. He had wanted to use it. Like it was just, and then I contacted, there's a Russian restaurant near me and they had been closed because of COVID, you know, everybody was shut down. And I known the owner and I called her and I said, hey, I have this idea and I envision your nightclub. When I see this movie being made, I see your restaurant. And she immediately agreed. She went and got a copy of the key made, handed me a copy of the key and said, do what you will. Go for it. I had a student of mine who, her and her husband, I did choreography for their wedding dance. They also used to be students of Joe's back in the day in Delaware. Did not know that. She owns a vintage clothing store. So I contacted her and she donated the skirt that you saw me wearing in the movie. Yeah. Everything just, it was like magic. Everything just kind of fell into place as I needed it to. And it was all like, it was crazy. I mean, I was very grateful. He was being careful with COVID. The filmmaker that we were working with, the videographer and editor, everyone did COVID tests beforehand. The venue was completely emptied, so we didn't have to deal with additional staff. Like we were trying to keep it as safe as possible, but I just needed to work. I needed to do something creatively, and it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done. I mean, God bless Brian, the videographer, because I annoyed the hell out of him with my edit mode. If I had the patience to edit it myself, I would have, but I knew I wanted it to be perfect and I didn't trust myself to edit it clean. So I'm really grateful for him, and for Joe for going along with it. But it really was such a rewarding experience. And I just want to do more stuff like that now.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And we're going to get right into it. And right after this video, we're going to talk a little bit about your new platform, Women of Dance, and then we'll get into our last segment called The Random. So everyone, check it out.
Quiero poner el mundo en pausa y darle play a tu canción. Sobre tu cuerpo mi guitarra y bajo bajo el cielo nuestro amor, pasar la noche con bachata, la luna y un trago de ron, para aliviar el sentimiento, para callar este dolor. Que pase el tiempo bailando y que con cada paso borremos lo malo que siempre ha sobrado. Ya ves que la vida son solo momentos que vienen y van, que ya no volverán. Cada cual está hecho de mil emociones, que a veces herimos buscando razones. Pero ¿de qué sirve si siempre volvemos al mismo lugar, al mismo lugar? Por eso abrázame fuerte, piensa que ya no hay mañana, como aquella noche que hicimos el amor en Casa Blanca.
Wow. Hey, big shout out to Brian Overa. That honestly was an amazing video. Again, also big shout out to Joe Figueroa for really trusting your vision. I absolutely love the video, love the black and white. Also love the little, extra little hair Joe had. I like that you were kind of twirling that around. That honestly, that's what happens when an artist has a vision and everybody understands and trusts, because sometimes people don't get it, as they say, but
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to life, as I say on this podcast, everything makes sense. And from the costumes, from the actual restaurant, from the camera angles, everything, from the transitions, it was beautiful. And
Thank
again,
you.
congrats on an amazing video. And
Thank you.
now it helps us transition to understanding now 2021, as we've been going through COVID, of course, realizing artists like yourself and myself have been able to create platforms that allows other artists to kind of share their stories. So, me seeing you having the new platform, Women of Dance, which is definitely giving recognition and appreciation to the multitude of women within
Mhm.
our dance scene, whether it's bachata, salsa, you name it, I think is really, really important. So, kind of gets an understanding of how that process, how this platform has impacted you.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
I
So I mean, the whole initial point of the show was I really wanted to be able to show a spotlight on all these incredible women that I know in this business, my beautiful colleagues who work their butts off, be it solo artists or part of a duo or part of a company, just really hardworking, talented women who not all of them, I think, were getting the credit that I thought they were due, right? There obviously are not superpowers, but like icons in the business. There are certain things that obviously, you know, you hear Grisel Ponce, Mama Diva, you know, Anya Katzman, the Queen. There are those big names, but then there are other incredibly talented women that maybe aren't household names, right? That crush it every day. So I really wanted to give them a platform, right? No offense to our male counterparts, but you guys get enough attention.
And I'm gonna say that as a male, we have a lot of representation, and the women need just as much.
Exactly. So I really wanted to do something that would focus on these beautiful women. What I did not expect was for the show to change my life the way that it did. I've known almost everybody that I had season one, I have had a relationship with in some way, shape, or form. Either I've worked with them, I've worked for them, I've hung out with them at congresses, backstage, whatever. There's always been some sort of connection. Nobody from season one was a stranger to me.
Yeah.
When I reached out to them. Granted, there were people that like I reached out to that I always looked up at like, oh my God, she's gonna say no when I ask. But there was something, right? So I knew all these women, but I didn't know their stories the way that I learned after their shows. So each one of them I came to respect and admire even more before I had asked them on. And I respected all of them before I invited them on the show. But my understanding and appreciation for each one of them grew immensely. But on top of that, they taught me what I should stand for, like help me, like just to realize, like, you know, what's okay in this business, what's not, what a woman should be standing up for, what she should be tolerating from a partner, what she shouldn't be tolerating for a partner. How involved should women be in the actual conversations when it comes to being hired for gigs?
Yeah.
Just so many different lessons, you know, and half the time I'm doing these interviews and I'm like, I feel like I should be taking notes. Like I can't, but I'm producing, right? I got this, you know, you use StreamYard, you do the same thing. You're trying to make the show run smoothly for your guests, right? For your audience, but you're also trying to be in it and absorb it and get all that information. So to say that the show was eye-opening for me would be an understatement. It really did change my life. All these women have inspired me and changed my life and made it that much better. So I'm so happy I started this venture and I cannot wait to keep it going.
Yes.
Season 2 will be back. We'll be back in October. And before the premiere episode, there will be a special recap episode of season 1 called Things That I've Learned. So
definitely looking forward to that. Absolutely.
So we'll definitely delve into that on that show and how much it has had an effect. But it really has been an incredible platform. And what you're doing, you know, is definitely, it inspired me because I'm like, look at Diamond doing this thing. And I wanted to do this. Why am I not doing this? Like I went to school for broadcast journalism. At one point, I told my mom I wanted to be the first queen of late night television. And then Chelsea Handler came along and I was like, oh, there goes that idea.
Yeah.
Right? Bitch stole my job. Anyway, so when I saw you doing this, you know, I was like, oh my God, like I could do something like this. This is possible. Like Diamond's making this work and he's telling these stories. Like, let me as a woman tell the stories of my females, you know? Not to take and again, this is me not taking anything away from you because I
No,
think you're
not at all.
fantastic and you do a fantastic job with this format. Like there's a reason why you're at so many shows. You've been a huge success. But I definitely wanted this conversation about women to come from a woman's perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for me as well, really starting this podcast, it was more along the lines of saying, I'm tired of just seeing the people I love on stage just on stage. Let
Mhm,
me have them come on, almost expose their vulnerability to someone they trust.
mhm.
Because the same conversations I'm having with them live that anyone can see from now to whenever is the same conversations we're having in private in the hotel rooms at congresses when nobody's there.
Yep.
And for me as well, my also focus was if I can do it, I want everyone to be able to do it. But also too, when it came to the topic with many women that I've had on this podcast, I told them I'm also the reason doing this podcast and speaking to women within our scene because there was a lack of representation of men having that conversation with women about
Mhm.
what women see wrong with the men in our scene.
Yep.
And me actually saying, being a male saying, yes, I'm listening, I hear you, and I actually agree with you because I've seen it. But the difference between me and many others is that I've actually had to have conversations with these males to correct their actions because for me, I've grown up around women my whole life, especially in this dance world, and I've seen the same microaggressions, transgressions on stage, off stage, you name it, in
Mhm.
rehearsals. And for me, I've always been more of a proactive person of I can't just say I saw something and didn't act. And don't get me wrong, I used to be in New York known as of an aggressive person because if I saw something I didn't like, if I saw a director talking disrespectfully to a woman, if I saw one of the guys I knew backstage saying something salacious and rude and crude, I would correct them. I would step up to him because I saw there wasn't people like me, even males, but also even females, not saying anything when if they say as they say, if you see something, say something.
Yep.
And for me, it was just I guess I never wanted to be a martyr. I never wanted to be the prior. I just wanted to be a person that cared and realizing it means a lot for you to say that because that's exactly was a mission. I wanted to have a platform that was going to help other people bring out stories from people that they know. And then seeing you create the Women of Dance and seeing some of the women also interviewed, it was amazing because yes, I want to hear more stories. I want to hear the collaborative stories between you and someone else and the journeys you both have been through because that's what I love. I love to hear about history. I love to know about the people beyond what they do on stage. So for me, it's an honor having you on because for me, you inspire me. We all inspire one another. And realizing, I think also through COVID and us being cooped up at home, it's given us other avenues of showing who we are. And
Absolutely.
that's really important. And I think now, you know, understanding how much our platforms are meaningful to people, I think it helps us now transition to our last segment called the randoms. So it brings some levity now, some laughter, some joy, some interesting moments we're about to have. So it's about 10 questions I have that
Okay.
can be dance related but random at the same time. So Sharon, all I need to know is when you are ready.
I'm ready. Bring it
All
on.
right. First question. I'm gonna have to just hit it right there. Cowboys or Eagles?
Eagles.
I,
Eagles. Is that even a question?
I just had to see if you had the same energy before.
Oh, don't make me go into a chant right now. I yelled too much at the TV last night and my throat's a little scratchy. So
Yes, and people as well. I'm gonna say I'm a Giants fan, but just because the Cowboys won does not mean they're ever gonna win a championship.
that's right.
Just had to say it right there. Eagles did win a championship in the last 5 to 10 years. So
And
that
both of our teams beat Brady. So you know what I
thank
mean?
you. That's all that matters.
That's
That
all that
right
matters.
there is All right, number 2. If someone says, Sharonne, I'm coming to Philly and I want to get the cheesesteak experience, where are you going to take them to?
Taking them to either Jim's on South Street or to this little local pizza place that's right around the corner from me that makes unbelievable cheesesteaks.
Okay, okay. All right, number 3. And I've had an issue with this in Philly, and I have not been to Philly since, even though I will be going back.
Okay.
What do you think of the PPA?
Ugh.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
bunch of criminals. They're
Yes.
horrible.
I've seen parking wars. I've gotten a ticket from them at Drexel, and they lied to
Ticketed,
me.
I've been towed. They're the worst. The absolute worst.
See, I had to bring some levity here. All right, number 4. If you could collaborate with one artist right now, either you've done a collaboration with them or always wanted to, who would that person be?
Oh, that's tough. I'm gonna say this person only because every time I see him, I make a joke that we should partner up, and I'm hoping that one day it actually happens, even if it's only for one routine. Jonathan from Orlando.
Yes, Shankosa.
Yep, I love
Okay.
it. I would love to have him throw me around in the air a little bit and do like a bachata cabaret routine.
Okay, this is a world of dance thing happening. Okay, I see, I see. All right, perfect. All right, number 5. What is, if somebody can say, what is Philly like? Or if you can describe Philadelphia in one word, what would it be?
Hmm. Philly in one word?
Yeah,
Passionate.
definitely. Definitely. I
Very
definitely agree
passionate
with that.
city.
Absolutely. All right, number 6.
Okay.
Give me one embarrassing moment, either you or something you've seen on stage.
Shoot, I got plenty of my own. My first ever performance with Art in Motion Pro Team was at Parks Casino, and my heels got caught on my fishnets as I did a hook. And it was like a cartoon, like everything slowed down, and I just went timber onto this floor. But like you said, when you fell, right? I don't even know how. I must have hit the floor, and as I was hitting the floor, I was unhooking my heel because I somehow bounced right up.
Mm.
There was a formation, and somehow I ended up in my next spot. I don't know how. No idea, but I just remember walking off stage like, oh my God, my first performance with the pro team, and I fell on stage. Like, really? Really? And it was my favorite routine, which was Loco de Amor. So,
And as they say, it's not how you fall, it's how you get back up. So
you know,
that's also important. All right, number 7. If you could have one last meal right now, what would it be?
one last meal right now. Ooh, I probably have to go with a Sicilian slice of pizza from Aldo's, and then my late grandmother's apple turnover for dessert.
Ice cream next to that or just
Of
straight
course.
up?
No, vanilla ice cream.
Okay, thank you. No chocolate. We need straight vanilla here.
With an apple pie type of dessert, yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. All right. Number 8. If you could have your own store right now, what would the name of that store be?
What type of store are we talking? That's a really loaded.
Any store.
Oh my God, I have no idea. Let's say Shasha Sparkles, and I would
Oh
sell
my, rhinestones.
rhinestones accessories for dancing.
That was a gimme. I thought it would have been Sharonne's, but Shasha.
Sparkles sounds funner.
Okay,
Isn't even
absolutely.
a word funner, more fun.
Okay, all right. All right, number 9. Give me one of your favorite dancing cities of all time.
Ooh. Oh, good Lord. You know what? It's a loaded question. If I'm just going social dancing, I
Mhm.
do love going to New York. Can't lie. New York is great. I've really grown to love onto over the years, even though I started on one.
Yep.
And also I just love New York City. I love going there, walking around, and now you have like the hustle parties happening outside.
Yeah.
Sunset hustle at the pier is always fun. So like for social dancing, New York, But I will say, in terms of congresses, the congress where I always have the most fun social dancing
Mhm.
is Jennifer O'Coin's event, the Canada Salsa Bachata Congress in
Yeah.
Toronto, because she's got a hustle room and I don't leave that thing all weekend. It is, I live my best life there every year and I close down the ballroom every time. So, and I'm so sad I can't be there this year because of stupid COVID and the barrier rules or whatever, the borders. But
Man, see, I just see how it's kind of giving you flashbacks, and I love that. All right, our last question. This one's going to be dance related.
okay.
I tell you, it won't be a loaded question, hopefully.
Okay.
But this goes like this: You're at your favorite event of all time. You're sitting, you're backstage, just watching the shows. The
Mhm.
organizer says, "Sharonne, I'm giving you the opportunity to choose the last show. Who is it?
Last show,
Last show, closing out Sunday night.
Tropical Gem.
Oh, that was just tip of the tongue. I love it. Absolutely. And I agree because Tropical Gem truly is legendary. Their routines, the Diablo routines, everything I've seen, just top notch.
What I love the most about Fernando's choreography is that it's not about formation changes. Everything is constantly transitioning.
Mm, that is very key because
Constantly
especially
moving.
in the states, we're known, and I've seen it in shows. People love formation changes, but when you just make it more a part of the routine instead of like this point here, I think
Mhm.
everything flows seamlessly. But also, I think also the acts in Europe just have a different way about them, in my humble opinion. I love our acts on stateside, but there's something about those European teams is just a different essence. But truly appreciate that. And I'm glad we can do this section called the randoms. Got allowed me to get to know you a little bit better, knowing that you were a true Eagles fan, knowing that you gotta love you some Jim Steaks. I'm glad you didn't say Pat's or Geno's because they're yeah. Thank you. I've had an experience at both, so I got to try some more. But ultimately, I think it helped me and allowed others to get to know you a little bit better. And now it helps us transition to the conclusion of our discussion and conversation. And honestly, Sharonne, from start to finish, I've enjoyed every moment. Just learning a little bit more about your history, your journey, your story. And for me, also seeing now the platform you've been able to create since earlier this year is really inspiring. I love just watching it, even when I'm at work, just seeing the different people you've talked to, whether it's Anya and so many more. And for me, I can't wait to see season two. Definitely will be sharing it. But before we go, I would love to know if you had any last few words for myself and the audience, but also contact info on how people can reach you and see what you're up to next.
Well, first of all, Diamond, thank you so much for having me on. I'm
Absolutely.
honored that you asked me to be part of your Women's Month celebration. Um, and like I said, I've been following your show since you started it. I think you do an incredible job. You are a wonderful host. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you for that. In terms of following me, you can follow my stuff on Instagram and on Facebook. Charv82 on Insta, and Women of Dance, both on Instagram and on Facebook as well. They have their own pages. So yeah, and just stay tuned. There's going to be, I have some announcements coming up, but I will announce them when I'm ready. So just
Absolutely.
stay
You
tuned.
got to do it on
Stuff coming up.
Yes, you got to do it on your time. And honestly, from the live discussions of Diamond Podcast, we fully support you and your platform and can't wait to see what you have coming up next. Everyone, I thank you for tuning in. This has been a very, very special episode 160 of the All Women's Month conclusion with the one and only Sharonne Vinokurov. And I thank you. This is Diamond here with Sharonne. Everyone, stay safe and we will see you soon.